To understand the 25-year history of CRBI, we must go back to a time well beyond 1993. Consider that when DeSoto stumbled through the Southeast in the 1500s, one Native American chief presented the explorer with a strand of freshwater pearls 12 feet long, with each pearl the size of a hazelnut. In the late 1800s, river dwellers were still pulling sizable gems from the Coosa's mussels. These locals were regularly struck by the sheer abundance and productivity of the Coosa's fishery. In 1896, the migration of eels up the Coosa into the Chattooga was so intense and massive that the eels clogged the turbines at the Tryon Mill and shut down operations. Even into the mid-1900s, giant sturgeon still patrolled the river bottoms. But then, the big dams of the 20th century were built and blocked historic spawning routes. By the 1950s, Dalton blossomed into the carpet capital of the world, and a paper plant, a power plant, and a General Electric transformer plant sprouted in Rome.
About 48, industrial began to move in, and that has caused the pollution to take hold. This river here was a very nice river, real clear and clean. We'd swim in it, kids would have a big time, had a picnic set up over here on the river. Of course, all of that has changed. I raise cattle altogether now, might say, and my cattle will not drink the water. I think he'd kill them if he was to, because all the fish, the turtles, gars, and even old carps cannot live in it now.
During the latter half of the 20th century, the same story played out on the Etowah, Coosa, and Chattooga rivers, long into the lives of CRBI members still living to tell the tale.
It was an Oakford sewer back then. We didn't play on it a whole lot, but we saw it, and it was completely different than it is today. Back then, the water would be blue one day and green the next day, and literally, I'm not kidding, people can verify this. If you wore white socks, it would dye them. There was that much dye. Your socks come out blue, maybe green, whatever. And in the winter, it was eerie that when it would flood, in the flood zone, there was lint and textiles hanging out of the trees, out of bushes. It was just like a zombie land or something. It was just really strange.
Meanwhile, in Rome, during a time when anglers were as apt to reel in toilet paper as they were a fish, a young Frank Barron and friends were learning to ski. That raw sewage was being dumped in the river mattered not a whit to the young and bulletproof.
And I can see myself right now getting up on those skis as I was pointed towards where the Etowah comes in from the left, skiing down the Oostanala as it turns to go and become the Coosa, and getting up on water skis right there. I never forget, it was a moment of great passage in my life.
Barron's was perhaps the last generation of the 20th century to frolic so on the Coosa. As water pollution grew worse during the mid to late 1900s, Northwest Georgians gladly took the jobs that came with the industrial growth and turned their backs on the river.
North Georgia was a poor section of the world, and all of a sudden in the late 40s and the early 50s, here comes a great savior, the carpet industry and the mining industry, and people had jobs. And when you talk to a guy working from 6 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and he's worn out, and he goes home and they say, by the way, you want to help us clean up the river? He'd say, what river? Man, I got other problems. I got to feed my family. And they were not ignorant. These people not dumb. They knew who was the polluters were, and they knew what would happen if you stopped the polluting. The mills would go away. And so you not only had a sort of a let's don't talk about it type thing, man, I'm making a living now for the first time in my life. It's a don't mess with me on this stuff, fella. You start fooling with my job, and we're gonna have some serious conversations.
It was against this backdrop that CRBI emerged on the scene in 1993. Some 20 years after the passage of the Federal Clean Water Act, textile waste still fouled the Chattooga River. In Calhoun, city leaders spent millions moving their drinking water intake off the Oostanala to avoid the carpet mill pollution coming downriver from Dalton. And everywhere, municipal sewage treatment plants still struggled to process and clean all our waste. In 1994, CRBI sued to prevent the continued pollution of the Chattooga River, prompting a cleanup at the Trine Mills. And today, the river runs clear again. Native Chattooga Countyans like Clinton Agnew are reclaiming their river, taking regular canoe and kayak trips down it. The nearby city of Lyerly, with support from CRBI, has even established a water trail on a portion of the river.
If it wasn't for CRBI, our socks would still be getting dyed blue and green every time we cross that river.
But CRBI didn't stop with the Chattooga. The organization took aim at Dalton and water pollution from the carpet capital, prompting progress there. They forced the cleanup of illicit discharges at the iconic paper mill in Rome. They stopped in its tracks plans to transfer Metro Atlanta's sewage to the Etowah River. They took on big city developers, securing $500,000 for land protection in the upper Etowah River basin. And they helped save in perpetuity Rome's Central Park. Through these many battles, something happened along the way. The rivers got cleaner, and over time, Coosa River communities turned to face their rivers once again. These waterways were no longer just receptacles for our waste. They became places worth exploring.
CRBI has been a great asset to Rome and Floyd County, but just from an educational standpoint, and been a very big part of getting people to appreciate the rivers and getting people on the rivers. I think there's been a total transformation in terms of people on the river. You never saw people canoeing on the rivers or paddle boarding or whatever they do now. Occasionally you'd see somebody with a power boat, but it was pretty rare.
When Frank Barron returned to Rome after service in the Navy during the Korean War, he and buddies purchased the recently retired Bell's Ferry ferry boat for the grand sum of $100. They floated it down the Oostanala and soon converted it into a party barge on the Coosa. He and his family took up residence on the banks of the Coosa, and ever since, as a businessman and civic leader, he has kept watch over the river of his youth, becoming a first-hand witness to its denigration and its recent restoration.
And all of a sudden, somewhere in our ancient memory of living on rivers came back and said, we're soiling our own nest. What are we doing? What have we done to ourselves? And you saw, and I saw too, in probably the 80s, maybe more in the 90s, the younger generation of this country stood up and said, we're mad about you messing up our rivers. We want to paddle them, we want to fish in them, we want to swim in them, and we're not going to put up with this anymore. The whole attitude changed, and you would be hard put to find somebody who disagrees with that now. I would say that the house that I live in now, it's on the riverbank. Probably from a pure value of location is probably worth twice what it would have been, say, 20 years ago. Purely because the river is clean. Happy days are here again. I would say that on a spring day, when I can, in the afternoon, when I walk out there and I can see 2 and sometimes 3 8-man sculling boats, one from Rome High, one from Berry, and one from Darlington, maybe 2 from Darlington with the clear oil screw, running up and down that straight stretch between me and the sewage treatment plant with young men and women. And then later on Sunday afternoon, see the Roman holiday go up and down there with kids. It's a warming sight, Joe. I love it. That sight of running up and down the river, boats running in the summertime, you'll see 5 or 6 boats a day. I love it. But that being able to see 1.5 to 2 feet down, straight down in the water, and see the rocks down there was just awesome. Just awesome.
Happy days are here again, the skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again.